Hey guys, Brandon Snyder here, team leader of Selling with the Snyder Group, and we are back for another episode of the Super Real Estate Bros podcast. I am here with my favorite mortgage lender in the greater Houston area and co-host,
DaveYourMortgageGuy.com.
We were supposed to touch fingers there.
Were we?
Yeah, .com. Okay. What are we talking about today, Dave?
Brandon, I want to talk about how VA loans roll. You and I have closed quite a few vets here in the last couple months and have obviously had wonderful experiences with them. And there's a lot of nuances and a lot of positives that I feel like many vets may not know about, and I want to dig into that with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so vital to educate and obviously empower our veterans getting out of service, or even if they're just PCSing, they're transferring stations. Something that I noticed, and I just want to preface with this, is that there's so much wealth to be had for our veterans, especially because of how accessible the VA loan is. I remember in high school and college, my friends who were going off to be stationed different parts of the world, and the first thing they went and got was a car. And if I knew what I knew now, I'd probably be screaming from the rooftops, "Don't do it, you fool. Go buy a house."
100%. Well, yeah, absolutely. And let's dig into that. So the biggest positive that everybody knows, but it's important to remind everybody, is that there's no down payment. Right? So right away, when getting down payment assistance programs are harder or may not exist or whatnot, this already gives you the lowest money out of pocket. And you were telling me a story about one that you just closed, right?
Well, yeah. So this is actually a little while back. So I had a client that you were actually the lender on the file, and he got a check at closing. He got his earnest money back at closing, which was so profound to me. It was so cool because when you're talking about, and especially the past 2 years in the crazy real estate market that we were just in, you have everyone and everything's competitive, and everyone's offering so much over, and they need to make appraisal gaps. And so seeing someone in the middle of the COVID market get a house, not having to pay over asking, and get a check back at closing, I was like screaming from the rooftops, "This is the best thing in the world," because it was so profound.
Yeah, no situation is gonna be better than that. And that's based on negotiating with the seller to pay all the closing costs. So what happens is the vet will put down an earnest money on the contract, have no down payment, have the seller pay all the closing costs, and then at closing, they get that check back.
Yep.
And that's what you're talking about, and that's huge. So we've got that. There's no monthly mortgage insurance. So in theory, when you compare that loan type to any other loan type, the payment is gonna be lower. Period. So there's a benefit there. Let's talk about the real estate taxes, right? And this is something I don't think a lot of people know. If you're 100% disabled, and even if you're lesser disabled, you're gonna get a discount on the taxes. But if you're 100% disabled, you actually do not pay real estate taxes in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a client, right, or he's a former client, and he's actually getting his real estate license, but he is 100% disabled, and you were, of course, the lender on the file. When we were looking at houses, I was like, I didn't know their income, but when you have people transitioning for work or stations or whatever, their income might change. They might not have income. So I was really surprised when he was like, you were like, hey, their payment's going to be really low, because they were transferring homes, and I think they were putting money into this house, but with the VA loan, because he was 100% disabled, he had a lower payment and qualified for more house, and regardless of income or anything like that, specifically because of that disability. Now, mind you, I want to preface that not everyone's going to be disabled getting out of the military, but that's such a benefit for our vets. If something traumatic happens to them or they have to deal with something like that, to at least be rewarded in the home ownership portal of, hey, we're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure that your liability every month is lower because you served our country.
100%. And you got to think too, in Texas, and we're based in the Houston area, I mean, those taxes are $400, $500, $600, $1,000, $1,500 a month, depending on the home price. Right? And so it's a huge difference in payment. It's not a little bit of savings. Mortgage insurance, maybe $100, $200 savings. The real estate tax could be $600, $800, $900 difference. So it's huge there. And going back to this disability, they're also many times able to get out of the VA's funding fee, which is really their big fee that they roll into a loan. So there's multiple benefits depending on your disability and the percentage going into it.
Sure, it kind of varies, right? Because we've seen funding fees, especially if you go shop lenders out there. That some of the funding fees on a normal loan are just higher than others. It just really depends on the company and things like that. But the VA loan is a little more specific. That doesn't really change, right?
Correct. So there's a benefit there. Here's another thing that people don't talk about, and a lot of loan officers don't know, and realtors probably out there. You can actually have a second VA loan.
This is my favorite thing. This is my favorite thing in the world to talk about, because this is, before you finish the statement, this is advanced wealth strategies. If you are a retired veteran or you are active duty and you are like, I need to go park my money somewhere because you're scared of inflation or whatever, you need to learn this advanced wealth strategy right now.
Yeah, and that's honestly a podcast for a different day, because I think stay tuned because that one's a man, and Brandon loves that stuff, and I agree with him. Another thing to piggyback, and going all the way back to the original story that you told on getting money back at closing, seller contribution, how you negotiate that deal. At the filming of this, we're in late 2022, right?
Yep.
The market has turned. It was difficult for some vets to get their offer accepted in the COVID years because there was multiple offers, and sometimes the seller or the seller's agent would get nervous because they assume 0% down payment means they don't have any money. That's not true, right? You can have all the money in the world and still get a zero down loan.
Yeah.
So, but now with it turning, if you're a vet and you struggled with that in that 2-year period, I mean, we're seeing deals left and right with seller contribution right now.
It's crazy. We've shifted to a buyer's market. I mean, this is, if you're a veteran and you're like, hey, I know it's PCS season, right? I got a friend, he's at Lackland in San Antonio, and he's going to be moving soon, and he's already planning for it. We're talking about it. He's like, hey, what's the market like? What am I going to do about selling my house? He's like, should we rent it out? And I'm like, look, man, if you can afford it, I think you should probably rent it out right now. But on the flip side of that, if you're buying right now, or you're thinking about buying because you're PCSing, or maybe you're just looking in general to utilize your VA loan, this is the time. This is a buyer's market. We've shifted. There's no doubt about it. We are in the middle of a recession. And so what that means is that buyers get to go get deals. Let's go get you those deals, so that way you're buying in equity, because the home equity isn't changing. You're still going to naturally appreciate 3 to 5% in the state of Texas. Some other markets are going to be different. But in Texas, let's go buy you a home under what it's worth, get in that equity, let it naturally appreciate every year, and you're utilizing your VA benefits. And you're if it's your first time home ownership thing, that's big for me. I love first time homeowners because it's a let's break the cycle. Let's get out of the kind of repetitive familial drudgery, right? Let's go build wealth through real estate.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to piggyback and end it with this. Make sure you're working with a loan officer and a realtor who has worked with veteran clients, understands what you're dealing with as a veteran, and the benefits and how to negotiate for you, right? So, Brandon, thank you so much, sir. Thank you guys for tuning in again. Brandon, where can everybody find you?
Yeah, so absolutely. We can be found at the Super Real Estate Bros podcast on all podcast platforms. I can be found at Selling with the Snyder Group on all social media platforms, minus Twitter, because I don't have a real estate Twitter. You don't want me on there. What about you, Dave?
I'm Dave, your mortgage guy everywhere. Make sure you check me out on YouTube for more videos and great topics. Thanks, guys.